catapult yourself back to like 1983. You go to a party, this band's on the stage, and you hear this. I mean, oh my God. If you went to a party and a band took the stage looking like they do and they played that shit, Jesus. Okay, Motley Crue. I figured, you know what? I always try to sprinkle some music in these streams. I am a massive music fan. I love music to death. There's certain bands like Tool. Definitely gonna do a Tool ranking, but Motley Crue is a good way to get my feet wet, you know. And I think Motley Crue are like the undisputed kings of 80s metal, like 80s hair metal, anyway. You know, that ugly term, 80s hair metal. And I watch a lot of those interviews with those bands like, you know, like Slaughter and Rat. And there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, guys, if you look for it. Like I was watching this interview with Dana Strum from the band Slaughter. But I mean, his history, he worked with Ozzy for a time there. And he's one of those guys that just kind of like sat back and observed everything. And he worked with Vince Neil too, actually. But he kind of just sat back and observed everything. He said, you know, Ozzy told him, you don't do cocaine? Come on, you do cocaine. And he's like, no, I don't do cocaine. He drank a little bit here and there, but he said anytime somebody would be on drugs, they'd be on cocaine, they would be a complete dick or be a complete asshole, or they'd just be out of it. But the thing he was talking about was they went from playing arenas in 1 week to almost literally the next week, the next month, they're in a freaking bus, you know, going to these podunk towns. That is how abrupt the, I guess the scythe across 80s hair metal was when Nirvana came along, you know? And Mark Slaughter, and we're going to get here to Motley Crue in just a sec. It's going to tie in, but Mark Slaughter stated that the reason that happened, one of the reasons that happened was because this new management came into MTV. And the program director, he basically stated, I want you to completely not play any 80s metal whatsoever. This new guard is coming along, Nirvana, and we're gonna only play this stuff from now on. It was that abrupt, and they went from being played in constant rotation to not being played at all. Yes, you can, Beth. Yes, you can. So it was pretty damn. I didn't realize how abrupt it was, and I was a teenager in high school at the time. Or actually, no, I think I just graduated high school. Like senior year of high school, I was watching MTV Total Hits Now, whatever it was, you know, and they'd have the countdowns, and they would have like Rat. I remember Rat had like a #1 video. You know, Slaughter, Up All Night was #1 for a while. It went from that to like the next. As soon as Nirvana came out, boom, it was gone. All that music was just completely gone. Record labels just dropped the bands. It was insane. But this is how we're going to tie it into Motley Crue. You know, even Motley Crue was affected by this, but Motley Crue was so big, you know, they were so influential, and their fan base was so strong that they still were fine. You know, they still stayed afloat just fine, even though their 90s albums, you know, they didn't do as well. Plus, and we'll get to that, but they lost Vince Neil for one of their first big album in the 90s after Dr. Feelgood. The next album was right in the middle of grunge, and they didn't have Vince Neil. So there's two things right there that were way against them, you know? But they were Motley Crue, like Aerosmith. They were so big that they still managed to have a fan base, you know, that was kind of thriving off of their previous material, you know, their 80s material. But a lot of those bands that were, you know, still trying to make a name for themselves in the 80s, like Slaughter, They went from airplanes and arenas to station wagons and interstates, you know, and it's brutal. You have to be really tough to survive it. Motley Crue is probably my introduction to 80s hair metal. I used to go did you guys go to the skating rink when you were young? I used to go to the skating rink, Skate Odyssey. And I remember the skating rink, they would play videos from MTV. And there'd be a lot of mostly it was like the new wave stuff, and you'd have like Genesis, and you'd have like Flock of Seagulls. But MTV during the day, and I'm talking like Shout at the Devil era. Okay, this is when I first heard about Motley Crue, saw Motley Crue. The first video I saw of Motley Crue was Looks That Kill. This was a video that MTV didn't play in like their daytime rotation. It was usually like late at night, you know? And I remember I was skating and they showed the video to Looks That Kill. And I was like taken aback by it. I was just like, wow, that's a band. They don't feel like they're a gimmick. Like they feel dangerous. You know, they feel kind of like tough. You know, like there's a quote that Vince Neil was saying that one guy was giving them crap because they had on makeup, and he was like, yeah, we might be wearing makeup, but we'll still kick your ass. You know, and you believed it. Motley Crue, they seemed like the real deal, you know, and they had the image, the pentagram, Nikki Sixx lighting his legs on fire. I mean, and the music was just really cutthroat, not giving two fucks whatsoever. You know, they pissed off a lot of, the Bible Belt folk stuff. Yeah, that everything was planned out. That pentagram that you see on the screen right now, Nikki Sixx knew exactly what he was doing. You know, how do you make a name for yourself? You got to ruffle some feathers. Kiss did the same thing. You know, you have to the music's not enough. You have to ruffle some feathers. You got to go big. You know, big hairspray, all that. Motley Crue did it right. You know, because eventually, when you have bands like Poison come along, and you know, I like Poison, don't get me wrong. Luckily, they had great music, but there were a lot of bands that didn't have great music, and then they were trying to look too feminine. Motley Crue, they looked like tough motherfuckers that wore makeup, but the makeup felt almost like war paint. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like they were trying to look like girls. So there was a danger, you know, and they backed it up. You know, with the stories, like if Motley Crue came out today, oh my God, they'd probably be canceled within a week. And but they always seem to get away with it. So anyway, yeah, let's now what you're here for. We're gonna count. I'm really excited about this. We're gonna count down. We're gonna rank the Motley Crue albums, okay? And I want your ranking too. So let me see, how many albums are there? How many are Motley Crue? How many do I have here? Hold on, let me see. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 albums. Okay. This is the full-length studio albums. This will not be greatest hits packages. I know that there are some singles that aren't on any of the albums. If I had to say what's my favorite of those singles, I'd probably say Decade of Decadence is probably my favorite Motley Crue compilation. You know? Primal Scream and Anarchy in the UK, those are two really good songs. If I Die Tomorrow is off of their 2-disc collection of their hits. That is a really great song, okay? And I almost wish it would have been on one of their full-length albums, because that is one of their better songs, If I Die Tomorrow. But unfortunately, it's not on any of their albums, so I can't weigh the quality of the album with that song. So know that going into this, we're not going to be doing like greatest hits albums, okay? So having said that, let's jump into number 9. And what is your number 9? What's your least favorite Motley Crue album, okay? I want to do this together, all right? Because I'm curious to see what you guys think along the way. See if we agree. Yeah, I gave a fresh listen to a couple of these albums, and you can probably guess the later albums I don't listen to as much. So I gave a fresh listen to them. just this afternoon. Okay? So, having said that, I'm going to go ahead. Let's go number 9. Number 9, of course, New Tattoo. I listened to New Tattoo today. It's a horrible album. It feels rushed. It feels like Hot Girls. What the hell? What is up with that? Like lately in the comments, there's been so many of these. It's like it makes the rounds. Like every few months, you start getting these freaking comments in there. It's so stupid. But yeah. New Tattoo. It's a really bad album. It just feels formulaic. It feels like no heart and soul is in the album. Yes, there are maybe 1 or 2 good songs off the album, but for the most part, no sir. It's just a bad album. And I can already tell you a big reason for that is because Tommy Lee is not on this album. This has Randy Castillo playing drums on the album, and Randy Castillo passed away a few years ago. And Randy Castillo is a really great. Oh, good, Dave, you're back. This is number 9. This is like last place. All right, we're starting with last place. I just burped. Sorry, but yeah, Randy Castillo is a great drummer. He played on No More Tears, that album with Ozzy. He played with Ozzy for a while. He just wasn't a good fit for Motley Crue. You know, Motley Crue, you have to have those 4 members for it to be Motley Crue. If you don't have Mick Mars, no Motley Crue. If you don't have Nikki Sixx, definitely no Motley Crue because he writes most of the songs. If you don't have Vince Neil, no Motley Crue. And if you don't have, who am I missing? Tommy Lee? Yeah. Mike Chabante, what's up, brother? Nice to see you. Yeah, Tommy Lee is, all 4 of the members are essential. And you notice that like most really, really successful bands, usually all 4 of the members or 5 of the members are like equally important. That's Motley Crue. Equally important. So New Tattoo just didn't, there was no heart and soul into the album at all. At all. It felt so rushed. It felt like an album full of throwaways. And that's just a shame, you know, because a lot of times when a band puts an album together, they start out with probably double the tracks and then they narrow it down. But it's sad because every single one of these songs feels kind of bland, you know? Nothing special. I will never, ever listen to this album again. There's one track on the album I thought was pretty decent, and I'd like to highlight a good track if I can. Oh, and by the way, The Dirt's not going to be on here because that's a compilation album, but let me just say one of the worst covers I have ever heard in my entire fucking life is Like a Virgin. Motley Crue should not be touching Like a Virgin. It's just a really, really bad version. I think Fake might be the only really like good song off of this album. You know what? I'll play a little bit of it for you because I can just, if I clip this out, actually, if I play it I can play like maybe 2 seconds of it, right? Hold on, let me see. Yeah, that's all you get. That's about the best you get on this album, okay? Number 8 is going to be Generation Swine. Generation Swine was the first album that Vince Neil, when he came back to the band. And it's a shame. It's a shame. And to be honest, it's nice that they got Vince Neil back, but ever since they got him back, they haven't had a good album, or like a really great album since. Okay? We'll get to, there are some good songs on one of these albums that's coming up that is post Dr. Feelgood. Okay? With Vince Neil. But Generation Swine, what many of you might not know is that I think like half these songs were written with John Corabi, who was the fill-in lead singer for Motley Crue for that one album. And so Vince Neil comes in and he has to sing songs that were, you know, John Corabi has a very different style than Vince Neil. So that could be one of the reasons why this album isn't the best. it feels more like a hodgepodge. You know how most albums, especially back then, it feels like like a cohesive unit. Like everything kind of blends together. It's a time capsule of a band at a certain moment in time. Generation Swine feels like the sum of a lot of different parts just kind of thrown together. You know, there are some good songs on the album. I think they were trying to go a little bit more like electronica in some of the songs. They were trying to fit in with what was going on at the time in the 90s. Afraid is a really good track, actually. Matter of fact, that's on my like running playlist. I listen to Afraid all the time. It's a good song. But there are so many throwaway songs off of this album, too. Mad Jackal, what's up, man? Yeah, Mad, we finished the Halloween talk, so make sure you go. We're ranking Motley Crue right now, so make sure you go back. But yeah, it's a shame because this was the return of Vince Neil, and this is what we got. It is nothing special, you know, some decent tunes on there, but yeah. And I remember there was the American Music Awards, and Pamela Anderson, she introduced the band, and they did an updated version of Shout at the Devil, which wasn't nearly as good as the original version. I mean, it sounded pretty much the same, like they updated the drums on it. But yeah, there's just not too much I can say about this album. It's pretty forgettable. I'm trying to even think of like, are there any other really good songs? It opens up with the kind of, you know, your album opener always wants to be a punch in the nuts. And it opens, you know, destroy. It opens up with a line, destroy. But then, you know, it doesn't live up to that promise for the rest of the album. It just feels kind of blah. So, all right, that's number 8. Number 8, let's go down to number 7. Number 7 is Saints of Los Angeles. And I gave this a fresh listen right before this. I have never even listened to the whole album. I've only listened to like a couple of songs off the album. By this time, this was 2008 when this album came out. And I was so over Motley Crue that I'd pretty much given up. You know, I'd given up because this was 8 years after New Tattoo. And after New Tattoo, I was like, that's it. They're done. This was the return of Tommy Lee. And boy, does Tommy Lee make a great return in this album. I never realized that this is actually a pretty decent album. There are some nice moments on this. I don't think there's some throwaway songs on this for sure, but you notice Tommy Lee's drumming immediately. He just has that really punchy style, just big, almost like arena style drumming, and he's Tommy Lee. There's no other drummer like Tommy Lee. He's one of the most influential drummers in rock history. You know, he was the first song I ever played on double bass was Livewire. And you know, Tommy Lee was just such a big influence. I always loved that he would spin the sticks, you know, and he would do the flip. But he was just a hard hitter. Like if you never saw Tommy Lee, if you never knew, you know, all those stick flips and spins, and by the way, that's probably so inspirational to a lot of drummers today. But just hearing him play, he has a very unique signature style, and this is way deep in their career. And he hadn't played on the last album, and boy, is he missed, because his drumming is probably the best part of this album. There are some nice tracks. I'm going to play just a little bit of one that really stood out to me. And it's even better than Saints of Los Angeles. Face Down in the Dirt. Yeah, let's go with this one. There you go. Listen to that fucking shit. That's good shit, right, guys? I had never even heard that song before until today. And I was like, oh, shit, this is good. This is really good. I wish I could play more for you, but I don't want to get this video taken down. But yeah, man, they came back to party on a few songs on this album. Okay, so I gotta give them credit, and they're pretty old by this time. But man, yeah, this album has a lot more energy than New Tattoo. You know, the energy is back. And I think Nicky wrote some pretty decent songs this time around. And this is their last album. You know, this is their last full-length album, right? Since I don't think they've done another full-length album since this album, 2008. So we might not never. So it's nice that they went out on a high note at least. Because like I said, we're probably never going to get another Motley Crue, like full-length studio album. It's just probably not going to happen. They could live off of the concerts and the residuals for the rest of their life. They even like bought their masters. So why even bother making another album unless you're like you really got something to say, right? So they went out swinging though. That's good. All right, here we go. And by the way, guys, from this point on, all these albums are really good, okay? And there were quite a few that I liked off of Saints of Los Angeles. All right. So next one, the Selftitled album with John Corabi. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, this is a really underrated album. As far as production goes, this might be the best sounding Motley Crue album out there. And I think this album really showcases Mick Mars, his guitar sound better than ever. Like I could just listen to Mick's guitar for, an hour on this album and be completely fine. I've never heard such a beautiful tone. Like he has, just really crunchy. His guitar tone is like crunchy, There's no other guitarist like Mick Mars, and I think the guy, maybe it's because he's so quiet and he's always in the background, and you have Tommy and Nicky and Vince. They're just such big personalities. And Mick Mars, he's this other guy. He lets the music do the talking. But man, the music does the talking. His guitar playing is a cornerstone of Motley Crue's sound. If you did not have Mick Mars, you'd be in big trouble. Okay? He's as important as probably John Frusciante is for Red Hot Chili Peppers. I've always loved Mick Mars' sound, and he's not a show-off. He always serves the song, and that gets the job done, and he still shines. He still sets himself apart from other guitarists. He's a great guitarist. And again, this album, so many good songs. Hooligan's Holiday, that's probably the most Motley Crue sounding song off of this album. And the reason I say that is because John Corabi was the lead singer on this. If you can't be successful off of an album that's of this quality, then you can't be successful, because they really reached for the top. And I think they wanted to really prove that, hey, that we can do this without Vince. And I think they made the absolute best album that you could possibly make, a Motley Crue album, without Vince. Because these songs, they're not suited for Vince's voice. If you listen to it, and John Corabi has like a Steven Tyler-ish type voice. So automatically he gives the band a different sound, because if you take out his voice, you can tell it's still Motley Crue. And this is their heaviest album. And I think part of that is because John Corabi plays guitar. And so you can hear that wall of sound in this album because of, having two guitarists. But, man, some really great songs on this album, too. I think Till Death Do Us Part is one of the most underrated Motley Crue songs out there. Like, that's a heavy song. Heavy for a lot of reasons. The subject matters. Because I've heard that it's actually about their situation with Vince Neil. And there was no love loss for quite a few years after Vince left. They were really angry with each other. And John Corabi, if you want to go down a YouTube rabbit hole, look up interviews with John Corabi. It took him a long time to talk about this, but even John Corabi doesn't have the best relationship with the band right now. He said one big problem was when he joined the band, it was tough because Vince Neil wasn't saying anything. You know, he kept quiet about what was going on. More importantly, he didn't badmouth the band. You know, he just did his own thing. But then you got Vince. I mean, then you got Tommy and Nikki especially. I mean, every interview they had a chance to, they would throw shade at Vince Neil. They would make fun of him, you know, and it was incessant. And John Corabi himself said it made him feel extremely uncomfortable because he didn't dislike Vince Neil, you know. Him and Vince Neil became friends eventually after this, but it just put him in a really awkward position because he didn't want to be that guy that was just throwing shade at Vince Neil. Vince Neil is a major part of Motley Crue. He's a big reason why people. So you had fans that were on both sides of the camp. You had Vince Neil fans. You know, you're invited, but your friend can't come. That was a cool tune. And then you had fans that were just, they wanted Motley Crue. And you know, they would shit talk. But I have to commend Vince Neil for taking the high road throughout that, for years, throughout that whole thing, and not bad-mouthing the band. You know? Because he could have easily done that. And it was almost like a gang mentality. Like, you know, Tommy and Nikki were kind of immature at the time. But they turned out a really great album. They did. But, you know, it was the timing and it was the fact that Vince Neil wasn't with the band that hurt the self-titled album. And, you know, the fact that they called this album Motley Crue self-titled, that was also a jab at Vince Neil. And by the time Vince Neil rejoined the band, it was too late. It was almost too late, you know. But man, this album rocks. If you got a good sound system, this album really kicks ass. It does. And they're pulling no punches here, you know. It kind of fits in with the tone, the vibe of music at the time in the mid-90s, you know. It was a little bit angrier. You had bands like Pantera that were coming out. Metallica was still big. So if you were going to make it in the world of rock in the mid-90s, you kind of had to be kind of heavy. And, you know, you saw a lot of bands like Skid Row. Skid Row's first album, it was more of like a hair metal type of album. But then in the 90s, they came back with Slave to the Grind. That is a heavy, heavy album, you know? And their mid-90s album, which I think is highly underrated. But by this time, the band had pretty much all but split up. They hated Sebastian Bach. But their last album was great. So, yeah. What number are we on? Let's see. We said 9876. Okay, so now we're on number 5, okay? Number 5. Girls, girls, girls. This is a really good album, and it's amazing that they were able to pull out this, given that the main songwriter was high as a fucking kite on heroin. He even wrote the Heroin Diaries. I have the book up there about, you know, that experience. He was literally like making a diary during the time. Ultra Light, thank you. He says, hey man, huge fan, donated on Stream Elements. Figured I'd show love here. Love your knowledge and excitement for horror. Makes me want to watch more. But thank you, man. I appreciate that. And by the way, congratulations. You're the first person to ever donate over on Stream Elements. Like, everybody's like, fuck that. I'll just do the super chat. So, thank you. I appreciate that. That's cool. But yeah, Girls, 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 man. This album, you can almost like feel the heroin in this album. Am I right on that, guys? Like, I've read the Heroin Diaries too. And you can see Nikki Sixx fighting this demon. And the last thing he wants to do is write an album during all this. And he talks about it in the book. Like, oh shit, the album's due. And I haven't really produced anything really yet. And so he pulls out Wild Side and Girls, Girls, Girls. And those two songs alone were enough to make the album a hit. Granted, I like a lot of the songs on this album. There's some really great stuff on this album. But, you know, he stated in the book that if he didn't write Wild Side and Girls, 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 Motley Crue might have been in trouble. Like, big trouble. because the other songs, as great as they are, they're not really radio hits, you know? There's some darkness in this album, like Nona, which I think is about Nikki Sixx's mother, one of his family members. But Nona is a really great song. You're All I Need is, man, one of the most underrated ballads I have ever heard in my life. That song is so damn good. Dave, you beat me to it, man. It's an amazing song to close. Is You're All I Need the last song on the album? I never even realized that. It's such a beautifully done song. But listen to the lyrics to it. You know, it's this piano ballady type song, but you're not really paying attention to the lyrics. But then he's talking about, you know, why he killed her in the song. So, I mean, there's some darkness in this album. I think subject matter wise, this might be the darkest album. It's not the heaviest album music wise, but lyrically, yeah, there's a lot going on lyrically in this album. It can get a little bit weird and psychedelic. So it's crazy that they wrote Wild Side and Girls, 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 which are two just instant hits, you know? Like, they sound poppy almost. Again, got to praise Mick Mars. Again, signature guitar, that beginning of, you know what, fuck it, let's play the beginning, all right? Let's play the beginning. But, I mean, just this opening guitar riff is so damn good. Let me get down here. Right there. That, I mean, first song on the album, right out the gate, Mick Mars fucking shines, saves the day, right? Unsung hero. Mick Mars, just genius guitarist. And if I'm looking at these tracks here too, Dancing on Glass has a heavy guitar like undercurrent throughout. Nona, Out of My Head Without You. All in the Name of Rock and Roll is a nice, you know, straight up rock track. There's a lot of good stuff on it. Oh yeah. You're All I Need is the closer, but Jailhouse Rock is also on there. It's a live version of, and the reason they did that is because Nikki Sixx, he didn't have any more songs written, and they had to throw something on there, so they threw in a live version of an Elvis cover. So, you know, Girls, 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 that's an interesting album. There's a lot going on in that album, and I love it. I love Girls, Girls, Girls. It might even rank higher, but I put it here for now, okay? Like, I probably listen to Girls, Girls, Girls more than this next album. But let's go to the next album. Next album is Dr. Feelgood. Guys, I think this was the first album that Motley Crue debuted at number 1. And it might be the only album that they debuted at number 1. This was the height of Motley Crue. They were massive by this time, you know. Could do no wrong. And they just got sober. You know, they were completely sober. Well, there's reports that Vince was sober. But the rest of the band were sober for a bit. And then, you know, what is sober? Like drug sober? Because some drinking still went on, I think. But I guess for a time they got sober. And they, you know, this probably is the most expensive album that they did too. The production is there. You can tell that there's a lot of money in this album. A lot of hits, you know. And that's not always like the greatest thing for me anyway. It's nice to have hits, but that doesn't mean that it's always memorable. You know, like comparing this to Girls, 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 like I probably personally, this is my list, I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's hard for me to say which I like better, this one or Girls, 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 because I do like that darker edge that Girls has. Whereas this one feels shiny and glitzy, and it probably would be lower, but it does have some really good quality tracks on it. It does. Dr. Feelgood, the opener, man, talk about a punch in the throat. That is a great tune. That, well, shit, let's do it. Hold on. That freaking opening, not just the guitar, but just Tommy's drums. That unique drum beat, you know, it's, let's play it. Let's play that opening. Fuck. I mean, come on, guys. Jesus. Just that alone is enough to wet your whistle, I guess. And I'm being very careful because Motley Crue, they might like completely delete this video. You know, that's why I'm being careful about how much I play. But Motley Crue is, for as bad as they are, you know, like that bad boy nature. Luckily, they had good music to back it up. You know, they put a lot of work into their songs, and every album, especially these earlier albums, the '80s albums, some amazing tracks on there, and more importantly, just you know, distinctive to Motley Crue. When you hear that, you know that's Motley Crue. You know, Tommy's drums, Mick Mars. You know, those two members are their secret weapon. I think those are the two most important members of Motley Crue. Tommy Lee, Mick Mars. Nikki Sixx writes the songs. Okay, but I'm talking about from a music, like playing the instrument. You know, he's the bassist. Okay, and Nikki Sixx, he's not the greatest bassist player in the world. But even in that song, Dr. Feelgood, the bass, it's really low end. Beefy, you know, just a very beefy opening. Unfortunately, I think Dr. Feelgood might be the best song on the album. You know, Kickstart My Heart. I mean, that song, any band could live off of that song. It's so big. They play it at sporting events constantly. You know, it's probably the most radio friendly songs. It probably gets the most airtime is Kickstart My Heart. And funny enough, it's about Nikki Sixx dying from heroin and being brought back to life. They kickstarted his heart. But man, the song, it feels like a rock anthem, you know? It's a great song, it is. And I think I've heard that song probably more than any other Motley Crue song, so much so that you almost get tired of it. If I'd never heard that song, the first time I heard it, this is a great fucking song, you know? Kickstart My Heart. So, but yeah, like Dave Vanderhoff was saying, Rattlesnake, Shake. I mean, there's a lot of great songs. Like all the B-side material still really good on Dr. Feelgood. You know, you got some guest vocals by Sebastian Bach. If you're listening, you can actually hear Sebastian Bach on one of the songs. I think "Time for Change." He sings on the back, in the back on that one. Bryan Adams actually sings back up on one of the songs. Yeah. So just heavily produced album. And this is probably the peak of Motley Crue. All right, next one, guys. What do we got? We got 3 albums left. What do you think number 3 is? Dave Vanderhoff says Theater of Pain should be next, but I'll tell you what, Dave Vanderhoff is wrong because it's Too Fast for Love. Too Fast for Love is, guys, don't get me wrong, these top 3, 5 out of 5. I mean, you can do no wrong with these last 3 albums, okay? If Too Fast for Love is your favorite album, you're not wrong. I love it that much. Yeah, this is top 3. I would say, and Mick Mars has stated this, it's pretty much a demo. I mean, it is the lowest produced sound that you can get out of a mainstream, you know, record company album. Like, is this Elektra even? Because that's their record company, Elektra. But is Elektra... do they even do the first album? I'm not sure. But I love this album so much because of the sound. You know, it's a testimony to Motley Crue is such a good band, or more importantly, such a signature sounding band that you could literally put them in a garage with a 4-tracker and it's still Motley Crue. It still sounds like Motley Crue. Call it synergy, call it fate. I don't know what it is, but you put these 4 members together and somehow magic comes out of the speakers. Okay? And this album was an example of that. It was a testament to that. The songs are so raw sounding, and you can hear that like dangerous nature of the band in this album. By the way, that is Vince Neil, and I just found this out like a couple months ago. I never knew who was standing. I didn't know if that was a member of the band. I didn't know if it was one of the band members. But I just recently found out that's Vince Neil. That's how skinny Vince Neil was when he joined the band. And you've seen Vince Neil now, okay? But man, all right, hold on. I like to give you guys just a little taste, okay? Man, and I'm gonna surprise you here because I'm not gonna play what you think I'm gonna play. All right? Listen to that shit, man. That's the last I think that's the last song on the album. No, it's not. There's one more. Oh yeah, On With the Show is the last song. Even though this album is so like low budget sounding, which I think is a big part of why I love the album so much. Like I wouldn't have, like if they went back and re-recorded this album, I would probably hate it. It's a time capsule. It's a moment in time. And they did update Livewire. Tommy Lee updated his drums, and his drums sound great, but I prefer the original. I prefer the original sound of this album. But I mean, this is one of those tunes. It's like every freaking song is great. Now, this right here. First song, guys. Let me pause it for a sec, so that way we can get away with this, okay? Because we got to hear that opening double bass. Okay, all right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. Listen to that shit. Fuck. People, they give Motley Crue crap because they say they're too mainstream. All that means is they were successful. They were pretty much the kings of 80s. But damn, do they got the music to back it up. And they came out swinging with this album, And it does, there's like a fun nature to this album. There's like a swing element to the album. You can really have a good, like, this is a party album, I think, even though it's so raw sounding, and it's probably the album that I listen to the most. I probably listen to this album more. Yeah, you are pregnant now. I probably listen to this album more than my favorite album on this list. Okay. It's so accessible, and it feels like it just like, boom, it's like 20. It feels like it flies right by, like this is one of those albums where I don't like switch tracks. I just let the whole thing run, it's great. So, the first inspiration for me playing double bass was Livewire. Livewire, I love the way that double bass sounds. First song on the album, and right away Tommy Lee is just making an impression immediately. I like the fills that he did, the little hi-hat tricks and the crashes, the way that he would hit a cymbal on one that would normally be a different like a tom, or he just had a weird way, like he'd hit the crash without hitting the bass. You know what I mean? And for some reason, he would make it work. Whereas most of the time, if you hit the crash without the bass, it sounds empty. But Tommy Lee was creative, and he had ways of like throwing you a left hook, and you're like, oh shit, where did that come from? That was Tommy Lee. Very creative drummer. So this was the album that I was looking forward to talking about the most too. I love this album so much. All right. So next one, we are down to 2, guys. 2 albums. All right. 2 albums. Here we go. Number 2. What could it be? What could it be? Number 2 is Theater Pain. Theater Pain is probably, and I was talking to Lindsay about this. This album is so damn underrated. Like, this album is so damn underrated. And this is one of those albums that I prefer the non-radio hits off of the radio hits. You know? Like Smoking in the Boys' Room, not my favorite Motley Crue song by a long shot. You know? It's a good cover. They made it their own. They made it sound like Motley Crue, but I rarely listen to Smoking in the Boys' Room. I go to this album for, well, you know, I'll play you what I go to this album for. Okay? I mean, there's some heavy guitar riffs on this album. Mick Mars steals the fucking show on a lot of this album. Some of his hooks in here, some of them are like dark and heavy, you know? Like, this is the bridge between Shout at the Devil and what was to come after. Like, this is the perfect bridge because you still have some of that darker edged, evil type stuff, but you also have a look into the future with Girls, 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 and even Dr. Feelgood. You know, some of both of that is on here, and all the songs are just fantastic. But let me play you what I mean. Just a sample of what I mean. First thing is, like, Shout at the Devil. It's pretty much a straightforward, heavy, dark album. And so what do? The first song off of the next album, you know, you hear that? This is like a swing. There's like a bluesy type vibe to that. I think that was smart to start the album off with City Boy Blues, because it automatically lets you know, hey, if you're here for Shout at the Devil, you're barking up the wrong tree, because this is not Shout at the Devil. They're evolving a little bit, you know? But there's still some heavy shit on here. Like, this is probably my favorite song on the album. Listen to that fucking shit. God, I don't want to stop it, man. That song, there's a feeling to Tonight, you know? There's something about it that just really grabs hold of me. There's a darkness to it, but there's also a little bit of that swing to it. There's a drive. You know, it's like a locomotive. That's what Tonight is. And then you get to this. Yeah. I love it. Tonight is easily one of the most underrated freaking rock songs of the 80s ever. And it's not even a hit. It's not even a radio hit. Think about that, guys. It's so damn good. But Save Our Souls from Demon. This song was actually in Demons. And I didn't even realize it. Listen to that. You hear that? Let me play that for you one more time. You hear what he did with the hi-hat there? I mean, the crash there at the end? I mean, that's how you start a fucking song, right? That's what, like, most drummers didn't do what Tommy Lee did. But every member freaking shines on this album. You know, it's such a great album. Then you got the ballad, Home Sweet Home, of course. Use It or Lose It. Fight for Your Rights. I Could Talk Theater of Pain all day. It's easily one of the most underrated albums of, you know, and it doesn't sound like like when you think about hair metal, it doesn't sound like hair metal. It sounds like a great rock album. Okay, I'm getting to number 1. All right, here we go. All right, number 1. Here we go. And you know what it is, so I'm not going to. Number 1 is, boom. Come on. I mean, Shout at the Devil. Shout at the Devil's probably one of the most important rock albums of the 80s in my mind. It's dangerous as fuck. You know, that's the vibe. You like, look at that cover. Look at the members of the band on that cover, you know? Some scary shit. Those guys, what did I talk about at the beginning of this video? I talked about Motley Crue, the image that they had. It wasn't just the music. This was a band they could get away with putting makeup on. They could still kick your fucking ass because they look dangerous, you know? You got the fire behind. Everybody looks like they're ready to fucking play, you know? I like how Mick Mars looks, you know, with the fire behind him. But yeah, this was a leap, a big leap forward from Too Fast for Love, you know? And Too Fast for Love is amazing. But Shout at the Devil is iconic. Shout at the Devil is influential, you know? There's, you know, this is that pentagram, this backs it up. This backs it up. And man, I think the production level on this album might be my favorite. You know, it's not it's not like glitzy and shiny and all that. No, it still has that edge to it, you know? And I mean, come on, guys. Guys, this is the heaviest fucking shit I have ever heard. Listen to this. Oh my God. Can you imagine that if you went to a party, never, you know, like catapult yourself back to like 1983. You go to a party, this band's on the stage, and you hear this. I mean, oh my God. If you went to a party and a band took the stage looking like they do and they played that shit, Jesus. They'd have to call the cops immediately, right? They'd have to call the cops immediately. But, I mean, so many damn good songs. But I think my favorite opening, you know how some albums have an opening intro and then your main track? If I did a top 10 opening intro and main track, Shout at the Devil in the beginning and Shout at the Devil, yeah, those two tracks together, perfection. Like, I can't think of a better way to start an album. You know, in the beginning, before, oh my God, just all that shit's insane. But, you know, just dangerous tracks like Bastard, God Bless the Children of the Beast, which is like a really demented little intro to Helter Skelter. This is one of my favorite tracks that's not a big radio hit. It goes a little something like this. Well, all right. Get the fuck out of here, man. Come on. Jesus. Freaking Red Hot. I was in a remember I was talking about, I was in a skateboard. I would go to the skating rink, and at the skating rink, they had this all night skate, and during the all night skate, probably like, you know, midnight, you could come out and lip sync, and I had a lip sync band, and I was the lead singer, and we did Red Hot, and I was 12 years old at the time. And, you know, back then, we were all into like freaking Rat and Motley Crue and, you know, just all that shit. Twisted Sister. And every week when we'd all meet at the skating rink, and I did Red Hot, and I'm swinging my hips and I'm like walking, you know, because it's like the middle of the skating rink, right? And everybody's like sitting on the floor, and we're the band, but we have no instruments. We're just like you got the drummer, he's like sitting like I'm sitting, and he's acting like he's playing drums. And you got one guy like he's air bassing, and the other guy's air guitaring, and I'm like swinging my hips, singing, you know, Red Hot, just going nuts. And everybody, you know, they had the music playing in the background, right? Everybody's like loving it. They're freaking out. Not because of us, but because of the song. Like, how did you win that? You pick the song. If you pick the best song, and I always tried to pick songs that weren't hits. And I loved Red Hot. Red Hot was like one of my favorite songs at the time. So, yeah, I'm dancing around, but I'm loving it. I'm 12 years old and I'm acting like a fucking idiot. But it was Motley Crue and it was awesome. And this was fun as fuck. This was really fun talking about these albums, these 9 albums. And yeah, I'm a Motley Crue fan. I always have these old albums to go back to. And I find myself constantly listening to those top 3. Too Fast for Love, Theater of Pain, and Shout at the Devil. Those 3 albums are... It's not easy to have even one great album as an 80s band. But Motley Crue had, 3, arguably 4 with Girls, Girls, Girls. So, there's a reason they're Motley Crue. So, yeah. That was fun as fuck, though, guys. All right, we did it.